coaching culture with Ben Herring.
Franz, what a pleasure to have you with me on this podcast, all the way from Shinya. Mate, I would love to ask you, with all your experiences, about your definition of culture.
Yeah, hello Ben. Yeah, thank you also for the opportunity just to put the heads together and talk footy. I've always enjoyed every minute we've spent the last few years when you were here in Japan, just talking culture, talking rugby. How can we get the best out of players? So yeah, it's actually, the questions that you also passed through to me. It was really good questions. It made me also think about the environment, Ben, I suppose, that we want to create as coaches, where players can grow and enjoy, and you can be successful, but also you embrace the downs of the game, when you're losing, and how you can bounce back from that situations as well.
I love that phrase, mate. Embrace the downs of the game. How do you do that, mate? That's a tough challenge in a culture,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah, I think I've told you before, a wise rugby person there in South Africa, Blikkies Groenewald. He's really, I think he's a next level skill coach. He's been with the Springboks many years, being involved in Blue Bulls rugby. But he said a thing is, your wins, you must take your wins to your heart and appreciate it, and your losses to your head. Think about it, chew on it, get the solutions, get the clarity. Don't change that around. If you take your losses to your head, you want, you almost like overthink it, and you stay sad for a long time. And so if you take your losses to your heart, and that pain for 24 hours is enough. But if you're too emotional about it, then you never get over it. But if you take your wins to your head, that's when you get ahead of yourself. You almost like get,
Yeah.
like in South African words, you get a big head. You think you've arrived. So I think that's also almost like a very good advice that he gave me when I was a young coach, Blikkies Groenewald.
Yeah, awesome, mate. Man, have you ever spent enough time actually to sort of define the actual wording of the word culture? Because culture is an overused sort of terminology. It's very cliched. It's very said quite loosely. Do you have a phrase around how you use it?
Ben, for me, it's easy. When I think about culture, I try to be almost like simple when I think about it as well. For me, it's like glue, that uh, almost like stick people together. Because a culture, if you create the right culture, it's normally in a right environment that happens. And normally, when you're in the right environment, you get the right behaviors. And that's how you know season. And once you've established a culture, every year, every week, every month, every day, you need to feed that. In terms of how you get that individuals to work together. So they can stay team. They have one mind. They operate almost like as one player, if you can call it that way, because we always talk about taking one shot. So it's all 15 players on the field working together, but not just that, almost like your 57 players at the clubhouse working together for that 80 minutes on a weekend. And your culture is almost like, where all those thinking and training and togetherness takes place. It's that environment that you create to help you to be consistently, performing. That's the way I see it. So for me, it's glue, because it's behaviors, it's traditions, it's your program. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of things that makes up a culture.
Yeah. And you talked about you need to feed that culture. Have you got any examples of how you do feed it? Like specific sort of things around, because it's a lot of things you can talk about, but is there anything
Yes.
specifically that you sort of hang your hat on as this is something that I like to do in my environments?
The more I stay involved with the game, Ben, the more clear it becomes to me is you need to consistently almost like drive the whole mission. Where are you going? What is the end destination where you are going, and how you can, in a fun way, but also a way that capture the minds the whole time. Because that's why I feel like, it's a daily thing. that you need to capture minds, remind players this is where we're going, and also not just the process, but also highlighting, when it's going well and you see some good actions and good behaviors on field, off field, rewarding that. But also when it's not good enough, when the standard is not there, it's almost like, to use that also as examples to say, listen, yeah, this one or two things happened in the week. We're seeing some weights lying around, people don't putting it away. How's the love and care looking? Loving the hard work. I see we're turning short. We don't do the extras. There's all those little things, Ben, what I feel like me as the head coach, I need to be on that. That's my responsibility, is to drive that culture, drive that mindset, feed it the whole time, reward it. And if it's not what you think it needs to be, it's also to have that accountability through the leaders normally. And if it's really, really necessary, we'll drive it through the team in terms of in-team meetings. But I also think, it's better for players to keep players accountable. And if it's really necessary, you can step in as a coach as well, because that's so much more powerful.
Well, probably just to back you up, Frans, for some of the people that are listening, I talked to one of your assistant coaches before to get some intel on you, and it's pretty similar to what you're saying. I think this is great feedback for you. And this was the quote from one of your coaches. Frans is very clear with the vision and goals we need to achieve as a team. The values and behaviors are always aligned with the leaders and driven by the coaches and leaders. He drives it so consistently throughout the season. And for me, I think it's one of the biggest compliments to any coach is when the people in your environment say back what the head coach is saying as well. So, mate, it's a testament to you. But how do you drive it consistently? I think, like, to have that consistency over a season when you have your ups and downs personally, is it a challenge? Is it hard? Or do you love it?
Yeah, no, Ben, I must say I love it. That's, rugby is my passion. When I was 12 years old, the British Lions toured in South Africa. It was Billy Beaumont and him and his British Lions toured there in South Africa. And that was, I think, the first time when I think back about my almost like journey with rugby, and how, rugby was a vehicle that I feel like, I think God used that also for me, to make a difference in the world, to change lives, or raise and release leaders, to get good players to become great, hopefully, and average players to become, good players. But for me, it's a thing that I constantly think about, because you want to win, Ben, and you want to win the moment. It's not so much the game on a Saturday. Obviously, everybody wants to win on Saturday. But how can you win the moment? What's in front of you? How can you pay attention, stay focused, set your goals? So, and if you want that from your players, I feel like, we as coaches, I spend a lot of time brainstorming, looking at the trainings. Even in our blueprint meetings with the coaches in the beginning of the season, I always record that. And I go back to what we said in the beginning of the season as coaches when we had our thinking tank, looking at our game, looking at our environment, and everybody thinks about it. But when we have our meeting, I make sure, what is that critical few things that we have to drive this season to be successful? And I always keep that in front of me. It's almost like a dashboard that helps me also to keep my eyes on the critical few, because everything is important and there's many things that's important, Ben. But, what I've learned through the years of being involved is it's not everything is important. It's what's that game changes. And for me, first of all, is you need to get your environment. That's why the culture is so important. Culture, make it fun. It must be family. It must be fair, but it must be tough as well. So if that happens in the week, and we get that mix right, the culture will be an environment where people can enjoy themselves, they can be themselves, and they can perform. Because the tough part is where you give honest feedback. There's accountability. And sometimes you have to show honest feedback in terms of straight talk, truth talk, to say, listen, this is not our standard. This is how it needs to look like. So you need that balance as well. And the other thing is the clarity in your game. How do your game look like? How you win? And that's the day-to-day things as well. What's that small puzzle or chunk that you're going to build on today that's going to make your game better? So it's that constant seek or desire to grow and get better. And the last thing for me is, so it's culture. It's that your game, get your game right, but also to train your game. That's one thing I've the last few years being in Japan, getting a lot of exposure to New Zealand players and Australian players, massive, massive scientific approach, like Crotty that came in here. Even Bernard Foley, has been involved in some successful teams in Australia. Just how they challenge and ask questions in terms of how we train, load, that whole balance between acceleration, deceleration, but also the endurance part of the training. So that's the things, Ben, that I try to keep my eye on that helps driving the process day by day.
Just out of interest, Franz, was that sort of experience with players challenging you with questions something you hadn't experienced a lot of before coming from South Africa? Was that a different style, or was it just done differently?
I think we just do it totally differently in South Africa, but always that's part of my leadership style. Ben, I've always tried to create a table where players, especially the senior players, thinking back of Fourie de Pre, Brian Abana, Victor Matfield, 100 test caps, almost 150 super rugby games.
Mm.
They know, they've been there, they understand the pressures of the game, under pressure, making the right call. So I'm really been big on having a table for your leaders, like I said in the beginning as well, for the coaches and leaders. So I've always listened to players' opinion. I make the final call at the end of the day, but it's very important, to have not just one mind thinking about our environment, our game, our conditioning, but to make sure we got players, but coaches and conditioners, everybody that chips in to make it almost like the perfect balance or the right mix.
Mm. Well, I guess that's a great lead in, Franz, because I was keen to ask you about that particular time when you transitioned into the Bulls and that
Yeah.
experience, because like you said, you were coming into that team who had some epic players. And how did you? And it's very successful, and they knew what they were doing and knew what they wanted to do as a new head coach coming into that environment, that culture. What were some of the big things that you had to be aware of and do from the outset when you're coming into a team like the Bulls at that time in history?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first thing I've done is to acknowledge their legacy. I mean, it's a
Mm.
massive legacy if you think back about the Bulls and their history of success, and being successful, winning competitions. Not just Heineke Meyer's time at the Bulls, but even before that, it's just been a team that's always been dominant in the Currie Cup, always provided a lot of players that played for South Africa. So first of all is to just acknowledge it. But the other thing is also just to be, real to myself. I can, knowing my strengths and also what I can bring to that environment, that was the thing that I also really try to focus on. And the first few weeks when I was in there, especially that December off season is really to sit down with the players, and ask them because they know they've been there with Heineke for a lot of years and being massively successful. Let's ask them, what do they think? It's working at the moment. Where's the need of change? And, in their discussions, talking to players, it's been there, and that also, highlighted what was the key things that we have to change. It was so clear for me after that. And a massive thing that helped me as well was that 1995 team of the World Cup that won the World Cup. Most of those players, and Keith Christie was at the Lions where I played as well. So I've seen that transition also after 1995, Francois Pienaar and Henny Leroux and Cobus Wiese and all those players, when they became professional, they won the Super 10, they've won Currie Cups and they won the World Cup. I almost understand their hearts and the minds of the Bulls as where they were as well. It's almost just to make them excited about the future, and where they are and what they still want to achieve in their rugby careers. So that almost the combination of me being in an environment as a player back in my playing days, but also, respecting what has been done there in the legacy and asking players, to just give their opinion. That helped me also to almost get a strategy for the team to go forward.
Love it. Love it, man. I can tell just by the way when you're talking, mate, you're passionate about it. It all comes flooding back. You're a passionate man, but you can see how you would have come into that environment. Is there anything specific? Can you give any one-off examples of something that you did change, whether it was big or small, where you said, from a cultural perspective, this is something I'd like to lay my mark on and do it like this? Was there, can you think back that far, and is there anything which stands out for you?
You know, Ben, rugby wise, I felt like the game and how they wanted to play the game and how the Bulls play their game, that was, it was a winning recipe. It was massive, build on the forward play, that world-class forwards, and then a 9 and a 10 that controlled the game. Very physical, dynamic midfield that always kept the forwards going forward, either with kicking or just hard and direct running. So there was not a lot in the game, but in the culture, it's almost just to redefine it, and create. And it was small things that we did, again, first of all, create a table where players really had a input, input in, what's happening, even before a game as well. What do they see in the opposition? How do they see the opportunities? Because they were experienced players, like a Victor Matfield will be there on a Monday morning, listening to calls of the opposition, analyzing them, and on a Friday, and all my 8 years at the Bulls, on a Friday at the latest, sometimes on a Saturday morning, he always had the opposition calls. And that was the level of, commitment that you had from players like them, but to create a table where they can, voice their opinion, talk about the game, so it was really to empower them, Ben. That was the big thing that I felt like, because in my personality as a leader as well, I'm a critical thinker, analytical type of person, and I've got no ego, so for me, it's easy to pull in players like that and also give them ownership, and allow them also, to make decisions on the field and not always trying to lead them by radio and sending messages on the whole time, but it's almost to really empower them to play the game and what they see, what's in front of them.
Is that hard, France, or is that just part of you? Because I know a lot of coaches would struggle, well, a lot do struggle with not being having that input, like to sit quietly and just let things unfold without feeling like they need to control every second thing. Is that just sort of an inherent thing for you?
I think so, Ben, because as a player as well, you didn't want somebody in your ear the whole time, because it's almost like robot rugby, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you're always waiting. At one stage, you're just going to wait. What's the next, instruction? But if you can play and you're free in your mind, then because situations can change within seconds, the momentum in the game can swing, and you can't always put a message on. It's impossible, it's there is ways to communicate, but for me, I trust people. I think that's my strength as a person. I really trust people. I like to empower people because I definitely don't know everything, and that's the way I make sure that it's a we effort. It's not a me effort, and I'm trying to be the main peanut in the packet there. That's I feel like that it's my point of difference is definitely being comfortable, sharing responsibility, giving accountability, but giving ownership as well. Because that's hard to beat. I feel because it's not just one man; it's a team that you're playing up and you're up against every week.
I love it, mate. And I want to go back to another person I had a chat to about yourself, mate. And they said this genuine care. He's a genuine student of the game. He sees the good in people and he has a positive outlook. And the thing I like best about France is he never burns an idea. And I think that goes back to your idea of what you do is you create that table where people can speak. And the fact that one of the people I talked to said he never burns an idea, I think is testament to the environment you've created or creating. And that's cool. But what does that phrase mean to you that when someone says about you, you never burn an idea?
So my kids help me with that as well, Ben, because sometimes they come and they talk to you, and then you there's times when they come and they talk about stuff, then you feel like, yeah, you can't believe what they're telling you. Things that they've been doing or things that's been happening, and then you need to you bite the bullet almost like and just listen them through and give them an opportunity to share. Um, and so that's one thing is to they must feel safe when they come to you, and because if they trust that you won't, judge them or like burn the idea, they won't come again because they almost
Mm.
they lose that. ability to come with, with suggestions. So I've seen, just like myself as well, when people just cut you off or put you down when you bring an idea, but when they encourage you and they listen and they're thinking about it, that motivates you as well. I like also when somebody bring an idea, it's not to claim it. I will say, listen, Ben told me yesterday, this is what we need to do. This is what we need for this weekend, because that will motivate Ben also, to come with the next suggestion and to think about, what is a better plan, a better way of doing it. I think that's also important, Ben.
Mm,
As in, like I said, it's important to not burn idea, but also to give the credit for the person
yeah.
that bring the idea into the team, because that's when the whole thing really picks up momentum and players get motivated, to add to the process and make it better.
Yeah, mate, I couldn't agree more. And like you talked about, you learn a bit from your kids. You've got triplets. So how does that go, mate? How have your triplets? Because
Yeah.
one of the time is enough for most people, mate. But you had three at once. How has your coaching been influenced on the whole by your parenting journey and vice versa? Because I often think that they're very much the same. I think most coaches learn a lot from their kids and take a lot of that stuff into their coaching environment. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, no, for sure. They keep me in touch with this generation, the alpha
Or is your
generation.
music selection pretty good, Franz? Are you listening to the right stuff?
Oh, yes, no, definitely, Ben. No, it's absolute a blessing. In the beginning, the day when I was still at the Bulls, when they broke the news and they said we're going to have triplets, in my mind, I thought um, that's a huge challenge. But I've been so much challenged to change, and to I'm a I've been a very selfish person, Ben, always looking out for myself, looking for comfort zones. And I think with the triplets, there's no hiding because you need to help. If it's only one kid, mom normally look after the one. If there's only one a kid in the house, but with the triplets, you can't hide, and that's when you realize what people have done for you, the sacrifices that parents make, to raise kids, to help them, to give the best for them. I mean, you will do anything for your kids. So that's definitely a thing in terms of even in the culture as well, to really care for people, to be real, Ben, because you can easily just ask, how are you? But you don't even listen sometimes, when the person answer. But to really be mindful and be present when they talk, because that's what that skills that soft skills of really caring and loving people. That's what happened when you become a parent. And I think that's the big thing for me with my family. The last 10 years here in Japan, we've been together. There's no family that can help. We need to make it work, me and my wife, and the kids as well. In the house, they need to help. Otherwise, you're going to need to do everything. So it's roles and learning them how to take accountability. That definitely had a massive impact in my coaching style and also really being, yeah, just real at the team as well. In terms when you speak about family, when you speak about caring and going the extra mile, and also show that with your behaviors.
Yeah, and do you think like when you said before that you might have been a little bit selfish, just all on the rugby? Do you think ultimately, if you had just hypothetically, if you just had one child, you might have continued on that same route, but because you had three, you took a big tack in the way you were as a human?
100%, definitely,
Wow,
Ben. Definitely,
wow,
because and even coming to Japan, because back home in South Africa, there's many family, there's a lot of help. So it's almost like you just get together as a family at night. If you think about how we raise our kids, because we're in the world, we're working hard, trying to
yeah,
to earn or to provide for them, to protect them, and to care for them. So it's a few hours, maybe max 2 hours, before they go to bed, that you can spend time. But yeah, 24/7. This is a text from the school. You're going soccer on a weekend. At night, you need to help with homework. There's so many other things that happen. So there's no way that you can hide. There's no way that you can just pass the bucket, or there's no responsibility from that side. And that's where I feel like, where I've realized also, I'm just, I'm look out for myself. It's always about how can I first look after my responsibilities of my priorities. And you also married with a family. Ben, it's that accountability from, I think, from Anelia, my wife as well, to sometimes straight and honest talk to say, listen, need you. Um, this is not a hotel. You're not in and out here. You need to be present. You need to add and help, So that's also a thing that changed me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that's great. And just out of interest, France, do you have any little ways to switch off from rugby? Because I know, like myself, in little periods there, you're just locked into the game of it and you're absorbed by it. But have you learned any little things that would be good pieces of advice for other coaches about when you hit the family life, how to switch off, or do you not switch off?
I must say the kids and the family also, they know like Wednesdays is our off days. So in the morning, I try always to catch up with Anelia that's more family time with me and my wife. Then the rest of the day is really to look at almost the week and scouting the new opposition. But I normally in a Wednesday go and pick them up. So that's almost like in my mind. And when we talk through our weekly planning, is just I try to pick them up from school, try to take them to the activities in the afternoon, the evening, and then at night is to do some stuff. So I never at night try. I get up in the morning early. I'm an early person. So it's just to really make that sacrifice as well, but not a sacrifice, but to enjoy it as well. Spending time with them, watching a program, helping them with stuff, taking them to a soccer or wherever they need to go, to really, allocate that time for family, but to make
Mm,
it a priority in your schedule as well. Ben, that helps me a lot because in that you talk to them, you connect with other friends and soccer parents or parents that helps their kids. That's also a nice way just to break away from the rugby for an hour or two or three to clear your mind. So that's definitely a way. Other thing that I like, we like camping. Being from South Africa, we like outdoor. So we always try to go camping. And when we're there, you really switch off.
yeah.
So when I'm off, I'm off. I try to switch off, and try to refresh and yeah, just have some quality time with the family.
Mate, I love it, and it is a very different camping, Japan versus South Africa. That's for sure. It's not as big and open as Africa, is it? Now, mate, when we go back to Africa, like I'll get to your successes surely because you've been very successful in Japan, with the Kubota Spears, who you've brought up from second division, but before we hit the upsides of it, you've had a lot of downs as well. Like you went through at the Cats, there was some sort of low points in your leadership and things like that. How did you deal with those low points as a coach in your leadership? Were you able to move on? Did it sink you down? And because a lot of coaches deal with a lot of different pressures, and it's always interesting to hear how experienced coaches like yourself who've been in it for 30 years reflect on their low points. Have you got any advice for coaches that are going through low times with either successes or not being rehired or all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, Ben, it's funny that you asked that because it's only almost like years after you've been in that pressure cooker.
Mm,
And sometimes when things didn't work, that you can look back and you can understand why things didn't work. Because when you, like when we were at the Cats, I think it was like, and even the Lions, there was like 2, 3 seasons that we never could win a game overseas, New Zealand or Australia. It was tough times, and every week you need to almost go back to zero. So I think it's mental mantras or little themes that you hold on to in times like that as well. I've always been very blessed with mental coaches that it's been involved with the teams. Yanni Botha, he passed away a few months ago. He's been the mental coach of the national sevens. He's been with Jake White with the under 20s when they won. But when I've been at the Lions, he's always been there and also at the Bulls those 8 years. And he helped me a lot in terms of, how just to process losses. And then obviously being involved here in Kubota as well with a guy like John Quinn. Just that the last 8 years that we've been here, 6 years that John has been helping us, that when you look back at that catch years, that first of all, that you could see how important this is, almost like the people you surround you with. Because in tough times like that, the game is not working. It's because the culture is not working. And the culture is not working, and it's sometimes because players haven't got vision. And they haven't got vision because there's no clear mission. So it's almost like the things that helps you now to succeed was things that was not in place. So I think it's John Maxwell that talks about the law of the lid. You can't grow, the team can't grow past your lid, because you put so in my beginning, I was 33 years old as a coach. I finished playing within 2-3 years. I was in professional coaching. So there's no way that you could have all the answers. And that's where I also learned, to create table, to create people that we can put heads together. It's not just me that try to solve the problem. So having mentors, Dr. Gerard Poel, maybe one of the most knowledgeable people that I know about, looking at the game, that speak into you, that always ask me, listen, how was your position in the game? That you had enough possession to play with, because you can't score if you haven't got the ball. And then looking at ways, how can you win position? And when you have the position, how do you go forward? Where's the space? How do you build pressure in a game, and how do you convert? That was things that when I think back at my years when I was struggling, it's all those little things as a player that you never thought about. But as a coach, because you need to think for 15 players, you need to think about, how can you be successful through a season? And even more thinking from the position that I'm now, looking back at those years when things didn't click, we were not successful. That's the best way, almost like Ben, to look at the years there at the Lions and at the Cats. And then going to the Bulls, where the process was in place. It was clear how they wanted to play. There was a great culture in place. Like I said, the legacy almost of that. That also helped me almost to almost like appreciate the tough times there at the Lions. That culture is number one. You have to get your culture in place. You have to get clarity on how you want to play and how you win, and how you build pressure. And then that mental game and how you can be consistently performing well. That's the things that's almost non-negotiables for me now. But it's through, tough times at the Lions, tough times at the Cats, we had to learn that lessons.
Would you say, just on those Lions and Cats, would this be accurate? So with the Bulls, they knew what they wanted to do on the field. Their game plan was so locked in. The game side of stuff was pretty much sorted. And where you made your impact was on some of that cultural stuff, like creating the table that players could speak on, that more the cultural side. Would you say that with the Cats and the Lions, that they didn't quite know how they were playing, that there was an element of technical and tactical first, or is it all bundled together with the culture?
I think it was both. Just to almost like explain a little bit, in Johannesburg, how you build a culture there is we playing at Ellis Park. It's close to Hillbrow. So when you finish, the whole schedule is built on it's almost like you focus, you get in there, you do your thing, and then you go because you want to get back to your home where it's, the home. And it's, we all know Ellis Park, that area there, it can be dangerous, So that whole piece of togetherness, in Pretoria, players go hunting, they barbecue, they together. So it's also understanding that, because even as a player, in the beginning, we didn't train at Ellis Park. Me as a player as well. And even when we, later on as a coach, we trained there, but it wasn't an environment where it was a family you could feel. And that's, Ben, it's not the players. That's why I say, it was, that was my learning. When I look back, the team didn't perform because, I take responsibility for that, because like the things that we talk about now, and I want to share some gold nuggets that helped me now looking back to it, I need also to front up and be vulnerable and say, listen, there in the beginning of my coaching career, there was a few things, that I didn't drive. I was not aware of. You always heard about it. People talked about it, but that was not your religion or your gospel, the things that you really, really believed in. But now, it's non-negotiables for me because, if the culture is not in place, there's not a really mission, and everybody is aligned, and there's a togetherness, and how you drive that from day to day, there's no way that you can have success as a coach. And it's so easy and enjoyable if you get at things right. And it's not just you, it's everybody working together. But that wasn't in place then, So yeah, it's for me, it's like easy to talk about it. And also
How do you reflect on that,
responsibility
France?
for that.
Like you made the point earlier that you have coaching meetings at the start of the year to sort of plan out the seasons with your objectives and things. And you said that you often record those and then you periodically go back and review them to make sure that everyone's staying accountable to what we said. But do you do that like 5 years down the track, 2 years down the track, 1 year down the track? Do you always look back and go, what do I learn from that? How do you reflect on these experiences? Is it something you do actively?
Yeah, so in the beginning of the season, it's normally that just to get the alignment, get the coaches aligned. Then we normally bring the leaders in. So as soon as we sort it out and the way we want, where's the growth? What was our learnings? Where do we want to go with our game, the innovation? As soon as the coaches is all aligned and we connect all the big rocks of our game, then we bring in the leaders, because so it's a massive accountability process that you almost like try to facilitate every season. So after the season, we do that. We give players the opportunity to review the season. They don't need to put their names on any of the papers, but they normally do, because that's the culture that we try to build. It's just speak your mind, honest feedback.
Yeah.
So they will tell you, in terms of everything. It's from coaching, medical, if there's enough balance, the program load for players, sessions, everything. You just give them opportunity and you try to ask questions that can almost like trigger them, to bring the almost like the suggestions, or to just say, what is working. So every season, that summary, because you want to summarize that, and again, what is the critical few? And then beginning of the season, you would talk that up as well to say, this is the previews, this is where we want to go with our game. So the process then makes sense and everybody feels part of it. So
Do,
that's
do you
what
bring
I've
do
been
you do you bring that review that you did the previous season? Do you bring that up to the team in the preview for the next year? Is that what you're saying?
100%,
Oh,
100%. So we share that. We share that with the players as well to say, this is the players, the review of 60 staff and players. This is the key things that came out of our culture, our mental game, our on-field, our game model, but also how we pay the rent, our conditioning, so in that areas, that's the four pillars that we build our system, or we have been involved in. I believe that's the four vital things that how you can build a process, that can consistently perform. But in that areas, we give players the opportunity and coaches. But at the beginning of the season, we looked at and we send it out now. Even so, every year you're getting better with this whole review process. So you
yes.
want everybody's feedback. It's going back to everyone in terms of this is what our findings was. This is what we're going to focus. And you can't do everything, but you pick the critical few. That might be 3 or 4 things, and we put all our energy to fix it. And that's what's working, what do we want to keep, but also what's the things that we want to change, and that we need to stop doing in our program. And then obviously, where's the innovation? So, in the beginning of the season, that's the things that we will use as almost like a dashboard that we want to keep our eyes on. That we make sure that it's not something that we just mention. But it's real. It's really things that can make us better. And that's why people, I feel like, they engage, they stay committed, because it's their process as well, Ben. It's not just my team, it's everybody's. It's got a massive contribution to make it successful.
Oh, I love it, mate. I love you're a man that always likes to close that circle off, France. So yeah, it's not just a review for review's sake. It's part of a circle of regeneration or something, isn't it? It's an active thing. I think it's outstanding. Now, mate, you left the Bulls with 4 kids in total, very young, the triplets, and then you went to Kubota in Japan. Well, on the way via Fiji and a couple of other things. But when you got there, I'm intrigued about your Kubota Spears journey because you went into a second division team and you over a number of years you ultimately built them up till they won the Division One championship. So you got promoted and ultimately won the highest accolade in the country. And the standard of that competition is excellent. So to take a team from second division all the way through to champions of the top division, how did you do it? What was your mindset? What got you there? Like from a cultural or organizational point of view, what were the big rocks in that?
Yes, Ben, it was like, the first thing that get into my head when you ask that is also it's a huge blessing, in terms of because um, I did not that idea, when we came to Japan, um, almost like that almost the size of the decision to come to Japan because Japan is unique. Um, Take first of all, you've been here. It was like a huge eye opener when you get into Japan and everything is Japanese. And they got a very strong culture. In other cultures, it's family first, and it's, you almost like there's family values. But here in Japan, it's just different. Things is working here. Everybody is aligned. Japan first. That's why I say Japan. You come with some ideas and stuff here, they will they will clearly make it. This is Japan. They proud to be Japanese. So that was a thing that was like really that you were aware of. And then when you got to the club as well, where you come from Ellis Park, you come from Loftus, it's a stadium, the infrastructure. You knew it was like 10% professional players and 90% is amateur players. So that dynamics, how you make that work. That first 2, 3 weeks as well, although you were very excited about the opportunity, you were definitely it was a huge wake-up call that you need to change and the way you think about it and how you coach. It's some of the players that was in the club, they just play to enjoy it and they love the game and they absolutely huge loyalty to the company. But standards and almost like a clear way of how they want to be a competitive side in the competition. That was things that in my discussions, like I did when I went to the Bulls, also to talk to players, it was clear that I need to change the way I coach and how I communicate because you talk through the translator. And you need to keep it short and simple, and it wasn't a quick fix. So it's
Mm.
almost like really to start from the bottom, Ben.
Yeah, because it's not a quick fix in Japan, is it? You've got
No,
to,
not at
you've
all.
no, no. And so, did you realize straight away that you had to change? Because a lot of coaches get to Japan and almost resist the system. But did you learn quite quickly? Look, I've got to adapt here, otherwise this is never going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Ben, just the whole thing about the difference in skill set, in terms of standards of execution, um, that was a huge, but also the way I present and how I break the game down. We really had to go back to coach fundamentals because back in South Africa at the super level, you get players that all of them comes out of high performance programs and you involved in that programs, from under 12, under 15, under 16, under 19, under 21, that's a pipeline that you build. So when players get there, it's more strategy and tactic and, how you make your game work. And not so much on the fundamentals, but when I got here, it was like really to go back and coach the fundamentals of the game. Um, but Ben, it's been the most amazing 10 years of my coaching career. I've
Yeah.
had some amazing experiences at the Lions, at the Bulls, at SWD where I started in my coaching career as a schoolboy coach. But this is like unreal what I've experienced here. My coaching style improved. And it's the reason Japan and the company, it's the most amazing people that I've worked with, from Ishikawa Sanda, the GM at that time, and then Mr. Matsuki was the executive of rugby, real people that absolutely had a desire and a hunger to succeed, and to almost like experience something that was successful, That's the only thing that went in their mind as well. They really were also open to change. They were also open to see what do you need. So I was always been supported in all my ideas. And there were some tough years at first 2 years because we
Mm.
picked up a lot of 50s, 40 points against Yamaha, Suntory, the
Yeah.
Panasonic, all the big companies. Has been over hundreds of years here in Japan has been successful. But so yeah, Ben, it's a combination of things. But for me, it was also to be really simple in the way I communicate and the way I coach, and getting players to, have that almost like awakening to see, there's huge improvement for growth and which areas are we going to focus on.
Mm. Do you think that would be the one takeaway if you were to go back to, say, Super Rugby or international rugby? Do you think that would be your key takeaway? Is that you're learning from Japan is to coach simpler?
100%. 100%. And also, Ben, I wanted to say that as well. Having the opportunity to coach guys like Ryan Crotty and Bernard Foley, that comes from really great rugby programs back in New Zealand, Crusaders, being successful, playing at New Zealand, Crotty in that New Zealand group that won back-to-back World Cups. And the simplicity, but also nailing the fundamentals of the game, that also helped me to almost like really buy into the whole thing of keeping it simple, like you said, but also really building your game on fundamentals, because you can't play above your fundamentals. If you can't catch and pass, you can't make a tackle, you can't keep the ball in contact, there's no way that you can put a game plan together.
Mm. Yeah, and that is the other cool thing about Japan too, your exposure to such a high level of players from all over the show that you actually get a nice mix that you can think about too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
It's especially for me, the fascinating thing is just the attack, the detail that goes into the attack in different countries like New Zealand and Australia, just the detail of shapes and how you play with width. Um, in the Bulls culture that we played was, it was very direct. It was in terms of how you can, drive, control the game with your kicking and your defense system and forwards. And I must say, Bernard and Ryan Crotty, Bernard Foley and Ryan Crotty really brought a different, and also Slushy, the Tanabe, he played
Yeah.
Panasonic, but played for Japan, has been involved in very successful teams as well. Just, their um, level of detail that they go into to make that attack also work, that make the shapes and attack and almost like bring that shapes and the skill set into a strategy that helps you, to play an exciting brand of rugby.
Yeah, I love it, mate. And has it all been have you had parts of your the career that you've gone, yeah, I would do that different if I could do it again? Like not talking about like the cultural pieces, but any like tough times or bad times, because it's obviously it's a good build to obviously win it. But is there times in there where you've gone, oh, that was a low point, didn't act the way I should have? Have you had those sort of moments?
Yeah, Ben, definitely. When especially when there's games in the season where sometimes it's games that you almost like you have to win and you lose them, and that puts you under pressure. Uh, you just almost like to stay connected with that top four, that semi-final, because once you're in a semi-final, then you can win the competition. But that whole season, when you slip up in games like that, where some simple things in the week, like for instance, not speaking up when something is not right, in terms of mindset, or not players not really executing their almost like their skill sets through the week, things like that. Ben, I feel like when you see something is not right and not stepping in and speaking up, that's things that help me also. When I look at the day, when I look at the week, is never to let something like that, almost like pass away, but to really be accountable and also to drive that mindset and that standards day by day. That's the things that I feel like, at the end of the day, that makes the difference, because you're winning the moment, you're winning what's in front of you. You're not thinking about next day or on the weekend, but it's just to make sure that you implement the plans that you have put out as a team.
Do you actually critique your day individually and go back through it at the end of every training day and gone, damn, I should have said something to Jimmy there because his or I should have stopped that drill earlier because it wasn't going. Do you actually go over your day personally and reflect so that the next day you come back with a little bit of intention?
We do that, Ben. And in the beginning of the season as well, we as coaches, after a training session, we will quickly come in, hot it, just looking at, what was the session? How did it go? How was the flow? What did we see? And it's all that whole thing. John Quinn gave us the model in terms of, how you can look. How was the mindset? How was the skill execution? How did the players stay on task in terms of the game, the strategy? So it's every day afterwards, it's just to look at, quickly, just speak about,
So
how was
you
the
get
attitude.
together as a coaching group on
Yes.
field and just have that, or go into a room and look at the video, or how does that work for you guys?
Yeah. At the moment, okay, the last few seasons, we've done it not daily. I will always go afterwards and look at the game, looking at the training, thinking about what we set in the training sessions, what did we plan, what was the goal setting, and that we achieved that, because that helps you also to stay focused, not speaking too broadly about the things, but almost like to lock your mind in what was the things that you were after. And if you miss, uh, almost like, if the main thing wasn't really the main thing, that's also a learning, is to really be clear in your mind. This is what we need to focus on today. And we need to nail this to be successful on the weekend. So that's one thing. But Ben, in the beginning of the season, we did it a lot. But as the season go on, you almost like get used to each other. The synergy and the alignment is there. So you don't always need it.
Yep.
But the next day when we get in our coaches meeting, we always will do like a quick hot review, thinking and looking at what was the takeouts from the previous day's training sessions.
Love it, mate. Mate. I'm getting this cool vibe from you, Franz. Obviously, I know how you roll it, but this kind of circle analogy keeps coming back to me, mate. You're always closing that loop, finishing it up by making sure nothing's left unsaid. Love it. I think it's a great little concept, that reflection piece. It's awesome. Now, Franz, mate, you've had more than 30 years or so, and you've sort of been through the full spectrum of coaching, from schoolboy to Super Rugby, international rugby, Japanese rugby. If you had to give one piece of advice from all your journeys and what would it be to a young coach coming through, that you say, this is a great piece of advice that I took a lot from my experience?
Yes, Ben, for me, it will be just be yourself. Um, you know your strengths. You know where you need to grow. You know what you need, what type of people you need around you to complete you, and also to challenge you, because there's an old saying that the person you'll be in 5 years from now will be determined by the people you surround you with, the books you read, uh, like the podcast you listen to.
Oh, yeah, great
Yeah,
plug.
the people that speaks into your life. And yeah, but be yourself, Ben. You can't be somebody else, because it's going to be fake. You're gonna be an actor, and it won't last. People will find you out. So
Yeah.
yeah, just go with who you are. And if you don't really love rugby, you won't last. In this competitive game, and the ups and downs, the roller coaster of winning and losing, and the pressures. So, but be yourself. And maybe another thing also is to be the ability to change gears in your leadership style. You can't have just one style. You need to
Ooh.
coach what's in front of you. If it's experienced guys with 100 caps, you need to involve them in your decision making and give them ownership. But if it's a rookie, that's when you're prescriptive, and that's where you tell and you say, listen, this is what I want. This is your role clarity, because that clarity brings intensity. Then they can play with confidence. They can play or perform on a weekend. So it's to change gears in terms of how you break stuff off, how you share feedback, because there's not just one leadership style. And I think that goes with emotional intelligence. So knowing yourself, be yourself, and yeah, have the ability to change gears in terms of your leadership style.
Mate, I don't think it's said enough, Franz. Like when you go to the courses, you often hear like, you are this sort of coach. He's an authoritarian coach. He's an empathetic coach. You don't often hear about that phrasing. He's a coach that can change gears well. And I love that, based on what's in front of you rather than any sort of generic box filling. And that, I guess, too, changing gears isn't just about changing gears within a team, it's every individual, right? Like when you're out in the field, you're coaching Victor Matfield very differently to your coaching the other lock he's locking with, who's a 19-year-old straight out of university. So I think it's a lovely statement for a young aspiring coach to be, is just to have that little bit of emotional intelligence to go, there's a different way of treating these two, even though they're both doing the same job in the same team with all the same structures and the same jersey and whatnot. Love it. Now, Franz, I've got one more question for you, and I really enjoy this question because I never know what sort of answers we're going to get, and that's what I love about it. And the question is, what's a belief of yours around any aspect, culture, leadership, the game, that you believe in or enjoy or you philosophize about, which you don't think would be done by others, your peers, your contemporaries, your audience, that they would probably go, no, I don't know if I agree with that. Do you have anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, Ben, it's more on I think in a religious sense, because on the game, of course, you align you with people, not that almost like always agree with you, but um, when you recruit people, players and staff, and I've always had the privilege to, uh, I've been once an assistant coach, but always been a head coach. So you can, recruit people that is like-minded. Um, best time to fire people is before you hire them. It's to really be clear what you want. But yeah, because my foundation, what I built on is I've got a serving heart. It's how can I add value to people? Because if you value people, you will add value to them. And sometimes that can be seen as a weakness. I know in the beginning of my coaching career, people said kindness is a weakness. And rugby wise, I don't think I've had a lot of my colleagues that see the game different, because the game is simple, Ben. It's a simple game. But how you build cultures and how you grow people and to become, what they also believe they can become. That's where I feel like, I'm different. I treat people different. I want to be also different, Ben, because I think and I believe different about life and how you look at, how you can make a difference. So rugby is a vehicle for me. Like I said in the beginning, is to, yeah, it opens up doors. I've been in places and houses and offices that I've never ever would have been if it wasn't for rugby. But how do I use that vehicle, to be a person that can add value to people? Because and not everyone always agree with that, because it's about winning, it's about accountability, it's about driving standards, and it's about ruthless, and sometimes uh, throat cutting, um, almost like managing or leadership styles, and that might be something. That not all my colleagues that I always coach with that agrees with that, but I'm fine with that, because that's, like I said, I can only be myself, and that grounds me every day. It grounds me every decision that I make. That's almost like to be also real and authentic to myself as well.
Yeah, Franz, that's absolutely awesome. And knowing you personally, mate, I can attest to the fact that you are all of those things. And just that phrase, mate, if you value people, you will add value. And I know what you're saying, mate. The sentiment that sometimes in rugby, that people that are kind won't get far, but you are the epitome, and that is not true. And because your level of kindness and care towards everyone you're around, mate, it builds people up, it invigorates lives, and it really creates awesome friendships. And mine and yours is one of those, mate. And I love being around you, mate, and I just have so much joy about these chats that we have, mate. So keep going, mate, because your style is something that the world needs, not just in the rugby front, but in the whole human existence, mate. So thank you, Franz, for all your effort and your journey. And I look forward to more success for the Kubota Step Bears and onwards, mate, for whatever may happen going forward with you and the family. So thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your knowledge.
Absolute pleasure. Ben, thank you also for inviting me. It's like yourself also, you eat and sleep rugby, and yeah, I appreciate you as well, my friend. And yeah, good luck with this podcast. And I know that will be a blessing for not just the last few that you did or last few years that you've been involved, sharing this, but yeah, may a lot of good things come from this initiative from you as well.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Coaching Culture with Ben Herring.